House number 13. Have you ever felt surrounded by something strange? Something you can't see but can sense? Imagine searching for a place of peace and quiet, only to discover you've entered a dark world with no way out. In this video, we will take you to an abandoned place where there is a strange house numbered 13, a house most people are unaware of, but some have entered and never left. Samir, a young writer seeking inspiration away from the hustle of the city, decided to choose this dilapidated house as his retreat. Little did he know that behind its ancient walls lay secrets that could shatter his mind. From mysterious sounds filling the hallways to dark creatures watching his every move, this house hides something much greater than just an old history. Will Samir manage to escape before he becomes part of the mystery? Or was his fate sealed the moment he stepped inside? Stay with us for the most terrifying story that will have you on the edge of your seat, eagerly awaiting the conclusion. House number 13 will not only ignite your curiosity, but it will also drag your mind into another world where there is no escape from the darkness. The sky was overcast with gray clouds as Samir drove his car along the winding road leading to the deserted suburb. He stopped in front of an old house with the number 13 engraved above the doorframe, its peeling paint hinting at its long history. Samir, a young writer struggling with writer's block, decided to get away from the city's noise in search of solitude to inspire his next novel. Despite its gloomy appearance, the house seemed like the perfect place. It was large, surrounded by a small forest, and nothing but silence enveloped it. As he stepped inside, he noticed the house held a strange charm. The wooden floors creaked with every step, and the walls were covered with faded wallpaper adorned with portraits of unknown figures. In one corner, there was a wardrobe locked with rusty chains, though it didn't pique his curiosity at the time. That night, Samir decided to begin organizing his belongings. As the night progressed, he began to feel that the house wasn't as silent as it appeared. Soft footsteps, as if walking across the upstairs hallway, interrupted his focus. He tried to ignore them, believing they were merely the result of his exhaustion. Sounds of the night. Samir lay in bed, trying to sleep, but woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of a door slamming violently. He carefully rose, holding a small lamp, and moved toward the source of the noise. The hallway was empty, but the door to the adjacent room was slightly open. He slowly approached and pushed the door open to find a room completely dark, except for the faint light coming through a broken window. In the corner, there was an old mirror, seemingly left there intentionally. As he drew closer, he felt an odd chill surrounding him. Suddenly, his reflection in the mirror moved before he did. Samir jumped back, stunned, and quickly closed the door. He returned to his bed, trying to convince himself it was just a hallucination. But he couldn't shake the growing sense that the house was hiding something dark. The next day, Samir decided to explore the house. As he wandered through it, he reached the attic, its door locked with a rusty padlock. He used his tools to break it open. When he entered, he found a room full of dust and wooden boxes covered with tattered cloths. Among the boxes, he discovered old diaries belonging to a man named Hassam, who had lived in the house 50 years ago. The diaries began as an ordinary account of his daily life, but the last pages were filled with strange symbols and repetitive words like, "The shadow is approaching." Samir shivered, but he was determined to uncover the house's mystery. On the third night, Samir began writing his novel, inspired by what he had discovered in the diaries. While he was writing, he noticed a strange reflection on his computer screen. He quickly turned around to find a tall shadow standing at the door, with no clear features, just a mysterious shape swaying in the darkness. Frozen in place, Samir gathered his courage and asked, "Who's there?" He didn't get an answer. Instead, the shadow slowly approached before suddenly vanishing with the sound of muffled laughter. Samir could no longer bear the situation. He tried to call one of his friends for help, but his phone lost signal. He woke up the next morning to a strange sound, like a repeated whisper. It seemed to be coming from the diary he had left by his bed. When he opened it, he found a new page that hadn't been there before. It was written in a different handwriting with just one sentence. Samir felt a chill run down his spine, but he chose to confront it rather than flee. He began searching the diaries for any clue that might explain what was happening. He found repeated reference to something called the Black Room, which seemed to be the key to all the curses afflicting the house. The problem was, he couldn't find any Black Room while exploring the house. That night, as Samir was writing at his desk, the light suddenly went out. He turned on his flashlight and headed toward the main circuit breaker. As he passed through the hallway, he noticed a new door he hadn't seen before. The door was completely black, emitting cold air and a foul odor. He slowly opened the door to find himself in a completely dark room. The floor was covered in broken glass, and the walls were adorned with the same strange symbols from the diaries. In the middle of the room, there was a small statue of a strange face, seemingly staring at him. As Samir approached the statue, he felt an invisible presence behind him. He froze in place and slowly turned around. There, in the corner of the room, stood the shadow, now manifested as a tall, faceless entity, its breaths audible in the silence. Samir tried to escape, but the door slammed shut behind him. The entity slowly advanced toward him, and in his panic, Samir threw the statue at it. The statue hit the ground, shattering into pieces. The room shook violently, and the entity screamed in a terrifying voice before suddenly disappearing. After the incident, Samir returned to the attic and decided to read the diaries more carefully. He discovered that Hossam, the writer of the diaries, had summoned this entity in an attempt to gain inspiration, but lost control over it. The entity became bound to the house, and it could only be banished by returning the statue to its original place. The problem was that the statue's original location was in a forest behind the house, in an old pit called the Mouth of Hell. Armed with an unexpected bravery, Samir took the statue's remains and headed to the forest. The air was stifling, and strange sounds filled the atmosphere. When he reached the Mouth of Hell, the pit was deeper than he had imagined, filled with dense fog and a foul stench. As he prepared to throw the statue in, the entity appeared once again, this time clearer and closer than ever. It screamed with a voice like howling winds. "You won't escape. You're next." Instead of giving in to fear, Samir threw the statue into the pit with all his strength. For a moment, the place fell silent. Then the pit erupted in a bright red light, followed by the entity's scream as it dissolved, disappearing completely. Samir returned to the house, exhausted but relieved that the danger had passed. He decided to leave the house for good, but before he left, he discovered something final. The diaries had completely disappeared, as if they had never existed. As he drove away from the house, he noticed a reflection in the rearview mirror. There, in the darkness, the shadow was watching him from afar. "You escaped, but the game isn't over yet." And so, after everything Samir went through, facing shadows that followed him and creatures emerging from the darkness, he finally escaped from house number 13. But the question remains unanswered. Did the story truly end? Or is the evil that lurked within its walls still following Samir, waiting for him in another place? If you think the story ended here, think again. House number 13 holds secrets yet to be revealed, and events that may be even more terrifying than we imagined. Did Samir truly escape? And has anyone entered the house after him? If you want to know what happens next and see the second part of the story, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to get the latest updates. In the next part, we will reveal more of the dark secrets hidden within house number 13. Are you ready? If you have the courage, don't miss what's coming. This translation maintains the atmosphere and tension of the original story. Ready for a gripping presentation in English,